Statistically, if you look at the lowest income households in the US, they spend like over $400 a year on lottery tickets.
Right. Which is wild when you think about it.
It really is. I mean, mathematically, that is a 1 in 300 million shot. And it represents nearly 4 times the amount that high-earning households spend on the lottery.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when you just look at the numbers on a spreadsheet, your first thought is probably that this is a completely irrational, just terrible financial decision.
Oh, totally. I mean, it looks like pure behavioral chaos from the outside.
Right.
But psychologically, it actually makes perfect sense to the person standing at the convenience store counter buying that ticket. You kind of have to step inside their worldview.
How so?
Well, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, and if you genuinely feel like the traditional avenues of wealth building are just, locked off to you, buying that lottery ticket is the one time you can hold a tangible physical dream. Yeah, it's a dream of getting the good stuff that wealthier people just take for granted. So they aren't buying a financial instrument, they are paying for a dream.
That is such a fascinating way to frame it. And welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
Glad to be here.
Today, our mission is to really uncover the true nature of financial success. We are unpacking Morgan Housel's groundbreaking 2020 book, The Psychology of Money.
Such a good book.
It really is. And to give you a complete picture, we've pulled together a massive stack of sources to cross-reference this.
Yeah, we really dug deep for this one.
We did. We are looking at academic reviews from the Public Finance Quarterly. We've got field notes from financial advisors, blog posts from the Collaborative Fund, and even this really raw, intensely personal confession from a Reddit forum.
Which is quite the read, honestly.
It is. And the core premise, the 3-line connecting all of these sources, is a realization that completely upends how we are taught to think about money.
Right, because we are conditioned to treat finance like architecture.
Right, exactly.
Like, you follow the blueprint, you calculate the load-bearing walls and the building stands. But doing well with money is almost entirely a soft skill.
A soft skill, right?
Yeah, it is about your behavior, your psychology, and your ego. I mean, you can be a mathematical genius, but if you don't control your psychological triggers, you will end up broke.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can talk about the actual mechanics of building wealth, we have to look at the psychological baggage we all carry, right?
100%.
We have to dismantle the judgment we pass on other people's financial decisions and recognize our own blind spots. Because the book makes this very bold claim right up front, which is basically, no one is crazy.
Right, no one is crazy.
People do things that seem mathematically wrong, but intuitively right to them at the time based on their limited view of the world.
And that's because we all operate on an incredibly restricted data set.
What do you mean by that?
Well, one of the most striking concepts from the research is that your personal experiences make up maybe 0.000000001% of what has happened in the history of the world.
Wow, that's tiny.
Right, but those same experiences make up like 80% of how you think the world actually works.
Oh, wow. It's like assuming the entire global climate is exactly the same as the weather in your specific hometown.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Like if it's raining where you are, you just assume it's raining everywhere.
What's fascinating here is how deeply that hometown weather, your generational timing, shapes your financial logic.
Right.
Consider the psychological wiring of someone born in the 1950s. During their teens and 20s, which are their most formative years, the stock market was essentially flat.
Okay.
So their brain learned through direct experience that the market goes nowhere and investing is just this stagnant waiting game.
Right, because that's all they saw.
Exactly. Now compare that to someone born in the 1970s. They experienced a massive life-changing economic boom during those exact same formative years.
Oh, right. The 80s and 90s boom.
Yeah. So their brain learned the market is a reliable ATM. Both of these people believe they're acting on cold, hard logic, but they're actually just reacting emotionally to their accidental birth year.
That is wild. And that emotional reaction, it trips up incredibly smart, seasoned people too.
Oh, absolutely.
Like while digging through our sources, we found a post from a Reddit user who goes by the name Fizrock on a Betterment Book Club forum.
Oh, yes. The Fizrock post.
Yeah, and this wasn't someone who didn't understand money. He had built up over $1 million in net worth right before the 2008 financial crisis.
Right, he was doing very well.
But by his own account, within a single week, he lost it all and ended up $300,000 in debt.
is just brutal.
He actually had to take out a loan just to cover his massive losses.
That cognitive dissonance is staggering. I mean, to log into an account and see a 7-figure balance turn into a negative 6-figure deficit in days.
Right. And he didn't lose it because he forgot how to do math.
No, not at all.
He fell prey to behavioral blind spots. He panicked. And, it's easy to judge him, but think about the people flipping Miami condos in 2005 or buying Cisco stock at the absolute peak of the tech bubble in 1999.
Yeah, they weren't crazy either.
Exactly. They were observing short-term momentum, and their brains extrapolated that momentum into the future. Their actions made perfect sense in their own heads at that specific moment.
And we really have to cut ourselves a little slack here because humanity is basically playing a brand new game.
That's a good point.
I mean, the modern financial world is an infant. The 401k was only invented in 1978.
Wait, really? 1978?
Yeah. And index funds are less than 50 years old. We don't have thousands of years of generational muscle memory to rely on for navigating a globalized equity market.
Right. We're making it up as we go.
We are a society of absolute beginners making these massive, high-stakes life decisions based on collective inexperience.
So if we accept that our financial worldview is just this tiny, localized slice of reality, we are forced to acknowledge two massive forces that dictate outcomes entirely outside of our control.
Luck and risk.
Exactly, luck and risk. And they represent the brutal dividing line between the skill of getting rich and the entirely separate skill of staying wealthy.
And those are two fundamentally opposing skill sets.
Yeah.
I mean, getting money requires taking risks.
Right.
It requires extreme optimism, putting your neck on the line and just swinging for the fences.
We see that with Bill Gates. The guy is undeniably brilliant and insanely hardworking.
Oh, absolutely.
But his success is heavily tied to the fact that he was lucky enough to attend one of the only high schools in the entire world that had a computer terminal in 1968.
Which is crazy timing.
Yeah. If he didn't have that incredibly rare stroke of luck, his extreme talent might never have found the leverage it needed to change the world.
Right. Luck is this invisible partner in every massive success story, but the psychology required to keep that wealth.
Yeah.
It demands the exact opposite of the traits that built it. Staying wealthy requires intense frugality. It requires humility. And it requires an almost obsessive paranoia that what you've made can be wiped out instantly by a shifting market.
The story of the 1929 crash illustrates this psychological pivot perfectly, I think.
Oh, the Jesse Livermore story.
Yes. You have Jesse Livermore, who is widely considered the greatest stock market trader of his day. October 1929 hits, the market implodes, and people are utterly ruined.
Just devastated.
But Livermore goes home to his wife, who is terrified they have lost everything. And he tells her he actually shorted the market. He bet against the prevailing momentum.
Wow.
In a single day, he made the equivalent of $3 billion.
That is just, he became one of the richest men on earth in a week where the rest of the financial world basically evaporated.
Exactly.
And the contrast in the historical record is sharp. Because at that exact same time, a multimillionaire real estate developer named Abraham Germansky lost his entire fortune in the crash.
Oh, right.
Yeah, he was seen tearing up ticker tape in despair on Wall Street, and then he disappeared completely. It's a tragic story of ruin.
But the tragedy eventually catches up to our winner, Jesse Livermore, too, right?
It does.
Because of the psychological poison of his own success, overflowing with the hubris of being the one guy who beat the 1929 crash, he started making larger and larger bets.
He felt invincible.
He really did. His risk tolerance completely detached from reality. And by 1933, just 4 years after his greatest triumph, he had lost absolutely everything.
4 years. That's so fast.
He went broke, fell into deep debt, and eventually took his own life. Both Livermore and Germansky were incredible at getting wealthy, but both lacked the entirely different psychological mechanism required to stay wealthy.
You see this exact pattern play out decades later in the story of Rick Guerin.
Oh, I don't know if I know this one.
Well, anyone who follows investing knows the lore of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger.
Sure, of course.
But in the 1970s, there was actually a third member of their investing duo, Rick Guerin.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, and Buffett himself has stated that Guerin was just as smart as he and Munger were. But Guerin had a fatal behavioral flaw, which was he was in a hurry.
He didn't want to wait.
Exactly. He didn't want to wait for the slow grind of compounding. So he used margin loans, borrowing heavily against his assets to amplify his investments.
Okay, that sounds dangerous.
Very. Because when the market tanked by 70% in 1973 and 1974, The mechanics of margin debt worked against him.
Ah, right.
He got hit with margin calls, meaning the broker demanded immediate cash to cover the dropping value of his collateral, and he couldn't pay it.
So what happened?
He was forced to liquidate his Berkshire Hathaway stock directly to Warren Buffett for under $40 a share.
Oh, man. That hurts to hear.
Right. He didn't lack intelligence. He lacked the ruinous instinct to avoid ruin instead. Michael Moritz, the billionaire head of Sequoia Capital, sums this up perfectly.
What does he say?
When he was asked how Sequoia thrived for 40 years in venture capital while most firms die in 5, he said they have always been terrified of going out of business. Survival is the foundation of their entire strategy.
But wait, doesn't fortune favor the bold?
How do you mean?
Well, if I'm an entrepreneur, or if I'm just starting my career, how can you ever achieve massive growth if you're constantly terrified of losing your seed money? I mean, does paranoia just freeze you in place?
Yeah, that is the ultimate paradox of investing. And Housel refers to the solution as a barbelled personality.
Barbell personality.
Yeah, imagine a physical weightlifting barbell. On one end, you must be fundamentally deeply optimistic about the long-term future.
Okay.
You have to believe that human innovation will drive markets up and to the right over a period of decades. But on the exact opposite end of the barbell, you must be fiercely paranoid about the short-term landmines.
Right. The recessions, pandemics, margin calls.
Exactly. The things that could wipe you out before you ever reach that long-term horizon.
Because if you hit 0, you're out of the game entirely.
Yep. Game over.
And staying in the game is the only way to harness the most powerful yet probably least understood force in finance. Compounding.
Compounding is where human intuition completely fails us.
Totally.
Our brains evolved to process the world linearly. If I take 10 steps, I am 10 steps away. But compounding works exponentially. The vast majority of the growth happens at the very end of the timeline, which just feels wrong to our linear brains.
Look at Warren Buffett's wealth. We focus on his stock-picking ability, but his true mechanism for success is just unprecedented longevity.
Yeah, time in the market.
He has been investing consistently since he was 10 years old.
Yeah.
At the time The Psychology of Money was written, his net worth was $84.5 billion.
Which is a staggering number.
But get this, $81.5 billion of that came after his 65th birthday.
Wow. That's almost all of it.
Right. The base of his wealth grew so large that an 8% return generated billions rather than thousands. The math changes, even if the effort doesn't.
And what he avoided during those decades is what allowed the math to work. He didn't panic sell during the 14 recessions he lived through.
Right.
He didn't rely on massive leverage. He didn't ruin his reputation.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think of compounding like the physics of a massive, heavy iron flywheel.
Okay, I like this analogy.
When you first start pushing it, it takes an agonizing amount of effort just to get it to complete a single rotation. It feels like a terrible return on your energy.
Right, you're sweating and getting nowhere.
But if you keep pushing, the momentum starts to build. Eventually, the wheel is spinning so fast that it generates its own sustained energy, turning effortlessly. But if you stop it midway to try and push it in a different direction, you lose all that stored kinetic energy and have to start from scratch.
And that sustained spinning is what allows you to benefit from what statisticians call long tails.
Long tails.
Yeah, in a distribution of outcomes, the tails are the farthest, rarest extremes. In finance, these long tails drive the entire system.
Meaning the rare outlier events.
Exactly. You can build a portfolio of 10 investments, have 9 of them fail completely, but if the 10th one is a long-tail success that grows by 10,000%, it completely eclipses all the losses.
Oh.
You can be wrong the vast majority of the time and still make an absolute fortune.
Walt Disney is the perfect embodiment of this. He made 400 cartoons that were absolute financial failures.
There's 400. That is an insane amount of failure.
Right. He was drowning in debt and teetering on bankruptcy. Then he makes Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
The classic.
It becomes this massive, unprecedented cultural phenomena. That single long-tail success pays off all the debt, builds his studio, and creates an empire.
And the broader U.S. economy operates on the exact same long-tail math. Over a 170-year period, the country endured 33 recessions, which is a cumulative 48 years in recession.
That's depressing.
It gets worse. 1.3 million Americans died in wars, 99.9% of all companies went out of business, and the stock market crashed by 10% or more, at least 102 times.
It sounds like an apocalyptic wasteland when you list it out like that.
It really does. But despite that constant, brutal destruction, The standard of living increased 20-fold during that exact same 170-year period.
Wow. A 20-fold increase.
Yeah. The long tail of human progress and innovation overrides the constant short-term failures as long as the system survives.
But if compounding requires decades of untouched patience to work, we have to ask why so few people can actually leave their money alone. Why interrupt the flywheel?
Right.
And the answer usually isn't an unexpected medical emergency, it's ego.
Ego and the desire for social comparison. We fundamentally misunderstand what wealth actually is.
This is the man in the car paradox, and it completely changed how I view status symbols.
Oh, I love this concept.
Imagine you are sitting at a red light and a stunning $200,000 Ferrari pulls up next to you. You do not look at the driver and think, wow, I respect that person so much.
Not at all.
You barely even register the driver's face.
Yeah.
You look at the car and think, if I was driving that Ferrari, people would respect me.
It's a completely hollow transaction.
Exactly.
We use the display of wealth to fulfill a deep psychological desire to be liked and admired. But the people we are trying to impress are too busy imagining themselves with our stuff to actually be impressed by us.
Which is pretty tragic when you think about it.
It is. We ignore the fact that the traits that generate genuine, lasting respect like humility, empathy, graciousness, they don't cost anything.
Alex Voorhees, a financial advisor who writes the Financial Field Notes blog, shared an anecdote that perfectly captures this illusion.
Oh, about the high school.
Yes. He grew up in Great Falls, Virginia, which is a highly affluent area. He noticed that 16-year-old kids would show up to high school driving $75,000 BMWs.
That's a nice first car.
Right.
Yeah.
Their parents were buying these cars specifically to signal their own social status to the other parents. Meanwhile, the families in his town who possessed deep generational wealth were dropping their kids off in boring, pre-owned Honda Accords.
And those families understood the crucial distinction between being rich and being wealthy.
Right.
Because rich is simply current income. It is highly visible. It's the BMW, the diamond watch, the massive mortgage.
Yeah.
But wealth is entirely invisible. Wealth is the nice cars not purchased. It is the jewelry not bought. It's the portfolio you can't see. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest mathematical way to reduce your wealth.
The absolute hardest financial skill to master is getting your internal goalpost to stop moving. You have to define what enough means for you, independent of what your neighbors are doing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally redefines the purpose of money.
How so?
Well, back in 1981, a psychologist named Angus Campbell conducted a massive study on human well-being to figure out what actually made people happy.
Okay.
And he found that the highest form of wealth isn't a luxury good. The highest form of wealth is waking up every morning and knowing you have the power to say, I can do whatever I want today.
I love that.
Yeah. Money's greatest intrinsic value is simply buying back your own time.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? If the ultimate luxury is just controlling your time, then the actual mechanics of getting there have very little to do with chasing the highest possible yield or landing a massive salary.
Right.
Building wealth is almost entirely dependent on your savings rate. And your savings rate is just the gap between your income and your ego.
And you don't even need a specific, tangible goal to save. We're taught to save for a house or a car or a vacation.
Yeah, usually.
But saving just for the sake of saving is what buys you flexibility and options in a world that is, frankly, deeply unpredictable.
To survive that unpredictability, you have to prioritize being reasonable over being rational.
Which sounds a bit backwards at first.
It does, but academic finance looks for the mathematically optimal, coldly rational strategy.
Right.
But you are a human being with cortisol levels and emotional limits. You want the strategy that lets you sleep soundly at night.
But think about it like having a fever. Rationally and medically speaking, a fever is an optimal biological response. Your body is raising its temperature to kill an infection. It is doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Right. It's a good thing, medically.
But reasonably. We take ibuprofen to break the fever because it hurts.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Humans are hardwired to avoid pain, even when that pain is a natural part of the healing process. If your investment portfolio is mathematically perfect but causes you physical anxiety during a market dip, You are going to panic and sell at the exact wrong moment.
Which is why every financial plan must include a massive margin of safety. A plan is only useful if it can survive contact with reality.
Yes.
You have to assume your future self will change their mind about their career or where they want to live. You have to avoid sunk cost fallacies where you throw good money after bad simply because you don't want to admit you made a mistake.
And this isn't just an American phenomenon, by the way. Dealing with our own psychological flaws is a global challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
We pulled a summary from the Edelweiss Mutual Fund out of India, and they noted the exact same human biases. Investors holding on to losing stocks out of stubborn hope, or selling winning stocks way too early out of fear.
So how do they fix it?
Their solution is to automate the human out of the loop. They suggest using systematic investment plans, or SIPs, where you can automate investments for as little as 500 rupees.
Oh, nice.
Or using balanced advantage funds that automatically shift assets between equities and debt based on market conditions, entirely removing your sweaty emotional palms from the steering wheel.
This raises an important question about how we fundamentally perceive market downturns.
Oh, right.
Because when the market drops 20%, our instinct is to feel like we are being punished. We view the volatility as a fine for doing something wrong.
Yeah, like a penalty.
But Housel argues that volatility is not a fine, it is a fee.
A fee, I like that distinction.
It's the price of admission. It's like paying for a ticket to Disneyland. Handing over that money hurts, but you pay it willingly because you want the long-term enjoyment of the park.
Right.
Market volatility is just the fee you pay for the magic of long-term compounding. If you reframe it as a fee instead of a fine, you stop trying to frantically avoid it and you just endure it.
Looking at this whole stack of research, the thing that sticks with me most is that financial success really is 80% behavior and only 20% knowledge.
Definitely.
It's about surviving the short-term landmines long enough for the flywheel of compounding to take over. It's about starving your ego to build invisible wealth.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today. Think about the biggest, most expensive purchase you are currently saving for right now.
Just picture it.
Hold it in your mind. Now ask yourself, brutally honestly, are you buying it for the actual functional utility it will provide you? Or are you buying it to manage the story that other people tell about you?
That is a tough question to answer, honestly.
It is. And what would happen if you took that exact amount of money, left it invisible, and used it instead to buy back a piece of your future freedom?
Because there is no diagnostic X-ray machine for your finances. There is no perfect spreadsheet. There is only you, your ego, and the time you have left.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring the invisible side of your own wealth, and we'll catch you next time.